Well, Megan, I want to ask you just kind of what the emotion and the feel is right now, because it feels like it's been a long journey to get here. Does it feel that way for you?
It has. James and I, my coach, we have this joke as being like a 33,000 week training camp. We've been preparing for this for a really long time, and we're excited to finally be here and have this happen.
People have been excited about you, people that know the sport, have been excited about you being in the UFC, but we had this kind of year-long wait for you to happen. I mean, can you talk about, I guess, what that was like? I mean, you cited personal problems, we heard visa issues. I mean, what was going on in that time that we had to wait for you to get here?
A lot of personal stuff happened. It's something that I'm probably never going to talk about, just because, even though a lot of my life is open to the public, there's a lot of my private life that I don't want. And I feel like I have a right to privacy, and so that's something I'm never going to talk about, but we're here. It definitely wasn't something that I wanted to happen, and it's something that kind of came up out of nowhere, but I'm super excited to have you dealt with that and finally be able to fight again.
I was going to say, I mean, without pushing too far, obviously, and respecting that privacy, I mean, was there a danger that this wasn't going to happen, that you might not be able to fight in the UFC? Because it seemed like you were staying the course, but it was awfully quiet.
I think there's danger with everything. Even if I think when you sign with the UFC and you aren't able to fight for X reason, there is a danger that they're going to cut you anyway. So it doesn't matter if you have. It doesn't matter what the reason. The UFC tend to sometimes be like that, but I'm just very privileged that they kept me on and they seen the value and the potential that I have, and I'm super grateful that they stood by me this whole time.
What was it like for you watching Cyborg fight from the sidelines? I mean, she had 3 fights in this year. Of course, you were supposed to be one of them. I mean, what was it like for you? Was it exciting? Were you happy to see the division develop, or were you frustrated thinking, this is supposed to be my spot? What was it like?
I was excited. I was really excited to watch Chris fight. I know she's been wanting to fight for the UFC for a really long time and fight for the belt in her division. So I was excited to watch her be able to achieve her dream. And it's about creating fights in this division. For a long time it was just fights with Chris, but we're starting a new phase now. We have Holly and I fighting for the first non-title fight in the division, and they're starting a tough house. So this is I feel like the next 6 months to a year is going to be a huge, phenomenal growth in the women's featherweight division, and I'm just really happy to be a part of it. But as to Chris and watching her fight, I love watching fights. Yes, I was definitely upset that I wasn't able to participate in the fight, but everything happens for a reason, and I'm hoping that fight we do get to have that fight down the road.
You mentioned, kind of being like the longest training camp ever. I do wonder for yourself, how did you manage during this time away? Because, right, I mean, there's a danger of overtraining, there's a danger of injury, there's all this, but at the same time, it could be a blessing where you're getting a lot of time to really work on honing your skills. So what was it like? What was your focus during all this time?
Really just improving, just everything. It was, I'm the type of person, you kind of have to tell me to stop or have a rest to be able to keep training hard, because I want to improve everything. I want to be the best. So I'm not going to stop. So that's where my coaches step in and just look, take the day off, or have a rest. And they really keep me balanced, so I'm not overtraining, and I can train for performance, and I can train to get better. I've actually really loved this time off because I'm not fighting back to back. So I'm not having to cut weight, I'm not having to focus on dieting, I'm not having to do anything. So I've really focused on my strength training. We're coming into this fight a lot bigger, a lot stronger, a lot faster. So that's something that I've been working on with my strength and conditioning coach, Eric Telly. So we've been, essentially the last year and a half, we've been making massive gains there. And then on top of that, we're making massive gains with my coach, James, at Glory MMA and Fitness. And even though it wasn't ideal to have this much time off, I think it's been a positive for me in my growth as a martial artist, and that's what more can you ask for? That's essentially the goal. Is we're all martial artists. We're all trying to get better, and I've done that. So,
when they came to you with this fight, you mentioned the first non-title fight in the featherweight division. I mean, it's a little bit of history, and of course, it's great to get your feet wet, I imagine. But I imagine you want to fight for the title as well. So, I want to ask, were you excited and say, hey, great opponent, I can make my debut, not in a title fight, or you think I'm supposed to be fighting for a belt?
We didn't really care. We were at the point it was just like, if it was Chris, if it was Holly, if it was somebody else, we just were ready to fight. We wanted to get a fight booked. If they wanted me to fight, I don't really have I'm not really in a position that I can dictate. I'm like, oh, I want this fight, or I want this fight. Like, they kept me on for so long, so I'm just grateful to be given the matchup that I did. Like, I think Holly's a phenomenal athlete, and she's a great name to have a fight against. And if it was Chris, we wouldn't be prepared. If it was Holly, we would have been prepared. We were just like, let's just fight.
You touched on Holly a little bit. I mean, as I said, a great athlete, a lot of accomplishments in the sport. Stylistically, I mean, how do you break it down? Because I think there's a lot of people that say, of course you're going to be bigger, probably stronger, more powerful. She's maybe going to have the speed and range. I mean, how do you see the fight playing out between you two?
I see it playing out with my hand raised. And that's the thing is, I hope the best Holly Holm is in that cage on Saturday night, and I'm going to bring the best Megan Anderson. And I think it's really hard to prepare for me because you don't know what changes I've made. The fighter that you last seen is significantly different to the fighter that I am now, and I think that's the hardest part. Is so like when people put up videos of my past fights, you have to understand you're putting up videos from like 2 years ago. That's a long time in MMA. People get better like week to week, month to month. So can you imagine what a year's done? So I think it's going to be very interesting. I'm really excited for the fans to watch this fight. I'm excited to be in the fight and to be able to showcase my skills. But I know what we've been preparing for. I know how hard we've trained, and like I have like full confidence that we've done everything we can, and getting our hand raised.
You mentioned the Ultimate Fighter that's coming up with women's featherweights, and of course this being a non-title fight. I mean, the argument out there that people make is there's just not depth in the women's featherweight division. Do you feel that's, is it still developing, or do you feel that's inaccurate to say that?
I think both. I think that every division is still developing. You literally have fighters come through every division that is still developing. So I feel that there is a lot more. It's just there's not a lot of attention on the featherweight division, so people don't know. But there are, in my opinion, I feel like there's a lot more depth to higher quality fighters in the featherweight division than say other divisions. Look at the flyweight division. You have such a vast array. You have girls who are 2-0 in the UFC in the flyweight division. In the featherweight division, like, you have girls that are like had 10 plus fights that just aren't being given these opportunities because they aren't in the UFC. So I'm grateful that they're deciding to do this, and finally women from all the divisions can finally get a chance at being in the spotlight in the place that everyone wants to be. Everyone wants to be in the UFC, and I feel like this is really exciting for the featherweight females. Like, there's a lot of finishers in the 145-pound division. I think a lot of people are going to start seeing that, and a lot of people are going to be excited about that. And I hope that we start building the division like even more than it already is.
You said everybody wants to fight in the UFC, and of course everybody wants to be a champion.
Yeah.
Are you thinking past? I mean, is a win enough? I mean, just going in there and however it gets done, whether it's exciting, whether it's boring, whatever, you get your hand raised. Is that enough for you to get that title shot, or do you feel like you kind of got to go in and make a statement to show that, yeah, I'm ready for Chris?
I don't feel like we really have to prove anything. People are going to say whatever they want to say, no matter how I win or what happens or how I perform. Like, everyone's going to have their own personal opinion. But at the end of the day, the UFC is who calls the shots. Yes, I hope with a win on Saturday night, I do get to have the Chris fight. That's something I've wanted for a long time. But at the end of the day, I can't look past that. I can't look past Saturday night because that's all dependent. All that extra stuff, the bonus stuff, is all dependent on Saturday night, and that's what I'm focused on.
If it goes perfect just the way you want, do you go in there and you get it done quick and get out of there, or do you go in there and put on a battle, back and forth, maybe some blood and guts out there and people going crazy? What's the best route for you?
I feel like any fighter would love a 30-second fight over a 15-minute, not gonna lie. But I don't really care. It's if I get an amazing knockout finish, great. If I get a submission, great. If it goes a distance, great. If it's a back and forth, great. I think as a fighter, I can learn from everything or every different scenario and let the chips fall where they may. Let's roll with the punches.